When my sister was dragged into court in handcuffs, everyone in my family turned to glare at me as if it was somehow my fault she was facing 20 years behind bars. A shame Natalie couldn't even be bothered to show up, I heard my uncle whisper. But I was there, sitting in the back, silent, watching. And when the judge's eyes scanned the room and landed on me, he paused, then stood. You're the head of the FBI's Northeast Cyber Task Force. You could hear a pin drop. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family or stayed silent just to protect the ones you love, this story is for you. Tap the heart, leave a comment, and subscribe for more true justice moments. Growing up, I was always the quiet one, the odd one. While my cousins played soccer in the yard, and my sister Courtney collected trophies for cheerleading, I buried my nose in books and computer code. People thought I was strange, especially in our family, where loud dinners and louder opinions were the norm. I didn't fit into their neatly labeled boxes. I didn't care for gossip Sunday barbecues or endless family group chats, so I became what they like to call me, the mysterious Aunt Natalie, or worse, the spinster with a cat and a laptop. I didn't correct them. Not when they assumed I was still unemployed at 32. Not when they joked about how I'd never catch a man or must be living off coupons, and certainly not when they said I probably spent my days playing Candy Crush in my pajamas. They had no idea, and I wanted to keep it that way. I lived in a modest condo in D.C., drove an old hybrid, and rarely posted anything online. What they didn't see behind closed doors was a world that demanded secrecy, encrypted drives, redacted documents, cross-agency briefings, and cyber intel operations that stretched across borders. What they didn't know, I was the special agent in charge of the FBI's Northeast Cyber Task Force. My job involved tracking digital footprints left behind by criminals far more dangerous than they looked. From underground marketplaces to rogue ransomware rings, I had seen it all. But none of that mattered when I walked into a family gathering. To them, I was still just Natalie, awkward quiet, maybe a little off. The last time I attended Thanksgiving, my cousin's wife asked me with a perfectly sweet smile, "So what do you actually do for a living?" When I answered vaguely, "I work in IT security," she blinked and replied, "Oh, like passwords and stuff." I just nodded, because that was easier than explaining how I just shut down an international phishing scam targeting the U.S. Treasury. My sister Courtney was always the golden girl. Blonde, bubbly, effortlessly charming, she lit up every room she entered. She worked in digital marketing, had a huge social media following, and was the type of person who posted rise and grind selfies with green juice and perfect eyeliner at 6 a.m. We weren't close, not because of any deep rift, but because we lived in entirely different worlds. She liked being admired. I liked being invisible. She lived out loud. I lived in silence. Still, I loved her. I always had. We'd lost our parents in a car accident when she was 14, and I was 22. I stepped in as her guardian for a while, but she never really accepted that shift. I was too young to be a mother figure, too old to be a friend. Eventually, we drifted. Birthdays became texts. Holidays became polite waves across crowded rooms. So when the family told me Courtney had been arrested for involvement in some kind of cybercrime, I was stunned. They said she'd been taken into custody at her condo in New Jersey. Something about stolen financial data, encrypted drives, suspicious wire transfers. But instead of rallying around her, my aunts and uncles turned their anger toward me. This wouldn't have happened if Natalie had just been there more, one of them said. I bet she understands all that computer crap and didn't even offer to help, another muttered. That was when I realized. They truly had no idea who I was. Not really. Not what I did. Not what I stood for. Not how much I had protected them, all of them, from threats they would never even comprehend. And that's how I found myself sitting quietly in the back row of that courtroom. No badge, no blazer, just jeans and a plain navy top. Invisible again. Until the judge recognized me. Courtney's mugshot had been all over the local news. A once rising star in digital marketing, now accused of trafficking stolen data, money laundering, and working with known cybercriminals. The headlines made her look guilty. The smirk they captured mid-blink didn't help. My phone lit up with messages. I didn't want to read. Aunt May, do you know what's going on with your sister? Uncle Jeff, this is awful. Where were you when she needed you? Cousin Mel, kinda ironic, huh? You work in tech, and your sister gets busted for cybercrime. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The worst was when my grandmother, who hadn't called me in over a year, left me a voicemail. I don't know what you're doing up there in Washington, Natalie, but Courtney's alone. She's scared. And you're always hiding, always disappearing when we need you most. Click. No one asked for facts. No one asked if I could legally help. No one asked if I wanted to. They just assumed it was my fault. Because I wasn't the sister who showed up for birthday brunches or shared behind-the-scenes Instagram reels. Because I hadn't posted a heart emoji under Courtney's engagement announcement 2 years ago. Because I didn't fit the mold. What hurt the most was this: they thought I chose to stay distant. They didn't realize I had to. My job required a level of secrecy even my own colleagues found frustrating. I couldn't share what I was working on, where I traveled, or even who I met with. It wasn't that I didn't love my family. It's that I was trying to protect them from ever needing to know the truth about what I saw every day. Still sitting in the courtroom that morning, I could feel the weight of all their stares pressing into my back like knives. Courtney was led in her hands cuffed, wearing a tan jumpsuit that made her look impossibly small. Her eyes were puffy. She looked lost. I hadn't seen her in almost a year. And despite everything, my heart cracked a little. She looked up once, right past me, didn't even recognize me. The lawyer at her side shuffled papers. Prosecutors whispered among themselves. The air buzzed with tension. The judge entered, and we all stood. Then, as he took his seat, he paused mid-motion. His eyes swept across the room and landed on me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe he'd seen me before, somewhere, maybe another case, but then he stood fully, straightened, looked right at me. His expression shifted from neutral to stunned. "Ms. Dawson?" he asked. "Natalie Dawson." Every head turned. My heart dropped into my stomach. I nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." The courtroom fell dead silent. I wasn't informed the FBI's Northeast Cyber Task Force director would be in attendance today, the judge said. A gasp escaped from someone in the second row. I didn't have to look to know it was my Aunt May. I swallowed hard, already feeling my skin burn under their collective shock. Courtney turned around. Her face crumpled in confusion. "You're—" what she whispered. I could see it all flashing across her mind. All the times I'd brushed off questions. All the years I was too busy to join family trips. All the quiet distance between us suddenly charged with a new meaning. But I didn't speak. Not yet. Would you be willing to approach the bench? The judge asked. I rose, walked past my family like a ghost, finally revealing itself. The air crackled with disbelief. My cousin's jaw hung open. My grandmother clutched her purse with white knuckles. When I reached the front, the judge lowered his voice. I wasn't sure it was really you. Your unit flagged this case last week, didn't it? I gave him a curt nod. Yes, sir. I'm here unofficially, just observing. But I believe my sister is being used. The judge's eyes sharpened. Go on. I took a breath. The patterns are off. The data she's accused of trafficking those access points match a known Eastern European ring. We've been tracking them for months. Courtney doesn't have the skill set or clearance to penetrate that level of security. He leaned back, slightly nodding. I'll delay the formal indictment, but I want your team's full report within 48 hours. Already working on it, I said. When I turned around, the room was different. Heavier, eyes wide, mouths open, shock rippling like heat waves across every familiar face I'd grown up with. But none more stunned than Courtney. Tears welled in her eyes, and she mouthed, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I looked at her. At all of them. Because you never asked. After that day in court, everything changed, but not in the way you'd expect. I thought maybe, just maybe, finally, knowing who I really was would make my family proud, or at least less judgmental. But instead, the whispers grew louder, more cautious, more distant. Uncle Jeff pulled my cousin aside and said, "So she's FBI now. What else has she been hiding?" Aunt May told Grandma, "I just don't like the idea of someone in the family spying for a living. Makes you wonder who she's watching." And Courtney? She wouldn't even look at me. I visited her twice in holding. She refused to come out either time. The lawyer said she was confused, betrayed, that she couldn't understand why I'd kept my life a secret when we were blood. She thinks you let her drown on purpose, the lawyer said. She feels abandoned. That cut deeper than any headline, because the truth was I had never stopped protecting her. In fact, I'd stayed out of their lives because I knew what I dealt with every day. The less they knew, the safer they were. But logic doesn't matter when your little sister is sitting behind bars, humiliated and alone. Logic doesn't hold up against a lifetime of resentment. I threw myself into the investigation. My team and I combed through hundreds of terabytes of digital logs, cloud backups, and IP traces. The pattern was there, just as I'd suspected. Courtney's personal laptop had been compromised months ago. It started small, an unnoticeable script embedded in a fake collaboration invite. Then, without her knowledge, her device was used as a bridge point, a clean node to route massive data theft from corporate servers in Europe. She wasn't the mastermind. She was the perfect pawn. Pretty, social, well-connected, no criminal record. No one would suspect her. No one would look beyond the surface. Except me. I worked 14-hour days, skipped meals, lost sleep. My apartment looked like a crime lab, sticky notes on every surface, screens full of binary code coffee mugs, half full and forgotten. I called in favors from DC, pulled cyber forensics from Quantico, even reached out to a tech contact in Germany who owed me a big one. Every clue we found pointed to a single digital fingerprint, Zero Wolf. A ghost in the cybercrime world. untouchable, ruthless, always one step ahead. And now, he'd used my sister. Courtney didn't have the skill set to encrypt what we found on her drives. The programming language was too advanced, even I had to slow down to follow it. And yet the prosecution's narrative painted her as some kind of digital criminal mastermind. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. Not just at the criminals, but at my own family for turning on me so quickly. At Courtney for not trusting me when it mattered most. And at myself for staying in the shadows so long that now, when I finally stepped into the light, no one knew whether to fear me or thank me. The worst moment came late one night around 2 a.m. I got a call from Grandma. Her voice was quiet, almost trembling. I don't understand, Natalie. You've always been so secretive. It's hard to know what to believe anymore. First, Courtney gets arrested. Now you're involved with the FBI. What else don't we know? I was too exhausted to argue, too hollow to fight. I didn't lie to you, I said softly. I kept my life private because I had to, not because I didn't care. And I didn't let Courtney fall. I've been digging for weeks to get her out. She didn't respond for a long time. Finally, she whispered, I miss when our family made sense. That was the moment I realized. To her, I had never really been part of the family, not in the way they saw themselves, loud open, constantly tangled in each other's business. I'd always been the outlier, the uninvited mystery. I hung up before I cried. The next morning, my analyst handed me something I never expected, a decrypted packet buried in a mirrored server. It was a recorded message, automated, triggered to self-delete unless preserved fast enough. It showed a transaction, a voice, a face. And in that split second, I knew exactly who had set Courtney up. The file was grainy, the voice disguised, but the face, God, I knew that face. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering so loudly I could barely hear the audio. Chase Reynolds, my sister's fiancé. The same man who showed up to every family BBQ with perfect charm and a six-pack of imported beer. The one who always kissed Grandma on the cheek, helped set up folding chairs, made everyone feel like he belonged. He'd been in our lives for 3 years. Long enough to gain trust. Long enough to dig deep into Courtney's professional connections. Long enough to learn just how valuable her company's data access was. And now, here he was masked, behind the code name Zero Wolf, orchestrating the entire operation with surgical precision. He'd used her, he'd loved her, and then he'd left her to rot. The voice on the tape, though disguised, was unmistakably his cadence, too smooth, too confident. And when he glanced at the camera during the call, there it was, the same scar by his left brow from that skiing trip in Aspen 2 winters ago. I couldn't breathe. I hit replay again, every time, hoping maybe I'd been wrong, hoping I'd find some thread to pull that would prove someone had deep-faked it or framed him. But no, this wasn't fiction. This was evidence. And it destroyed something in me. I had warned Courtney about Chase once, back when she told me she was thinking of moving in with him. People like him want something, I'd said. She'd rolled her eyes and laughed. You think everyone wants something, Nat. You're so cynical. She'd said I was jealous, that I didn't know what love looked like. And now she was sitting in a concrete cell, while the man she trusted most had disappeared without a trace, his digital footprint wiped so clean it was almost poetic. Almost. But not clean enough. We had him now. I printed the files, compiled the decrypted audio, sent it to the federal prosecutor with a single message: urgent reopen suspect list. Key evidence attached. Then I closed my laptop and sobbed. Not because of Chase, not because of the case, but because it hurt more than I expected to be right. To have the proof, the expertise, the title, and still, no one in my family had asked me to look deeper. They'd just assumed the worst, again. I thought back to when Courtney got engaged. I was in Berlin working a multi-country sweep on a child exploitation ring. I had to miss the engagement party. She'd texted me once after that, "Courtney, I don't know what you do that's so important, but I hope it's worth never being part of anything." I never replied. I didn't know how. That message played over and over in my head now, like a cruel echo. Was it worth it? All the silence, the distance, the secrets I thought I was protecting them. But maybe all I did was build a wall they couldn't see through and then blame them when they didn't try to climb over. Still, I had a job to do. I met with the assistant U.S. attorney the next morning. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the evidence. This changes everything," she said. "We'll file to dismiss the charges against Courtney within 72 hours, she added, looking at me. "But I need to know, can we find him?" "We will," I said flatly. "He's good, but he's not me." Back at the office, my team was already tracing financial routes tied to Chase's burner wallets. He'd laundered through crypto international art auctions, even a fake humanitarian startup based in Singapore. Classic Zero Wolf. He always thought he was untouchable, but now that I was on it, he'd just made it personal. That night, I finally went to see Courtney again. This time, she came out. Her eyes were red. She looked 10 years older. When she sat down behind the glass, she didn't speak, just stared at me like she didn't know whether to hug me or punch me. I slid the file toward the divider. She picked it up, flipped through. At first confusion, then disbelief, then horror. When she reached the photo still of Chase looking directly into the camera, her mouth dropped open. "No," she whispered. "No, it's not. He wouldn't." "He did," I said quietly. "I'm sorry." Her hands trembled. She clutched the paper like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "I loved him," she said. "I defended him when people said he was too smooth, too perfect. I thought I was lucky." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You were never the criminal Courtney. You were the bait." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I thought you didn't care about me," she choked out. "You missed so many birthdays. You never called back. I thought you didn't want to be part of this family." I looked at her eyes burning. "I didn't want to be seen court, not because I didn't love you, but because if people knew who I really was, they'd come for you." For a long moment, neither of us said a word. Then she leaned her forehead against the glass and whispered, "I'm sorry." "Me too," I wanted to say, but the words didn't come. Instead, I pressed my hand to the divider, and slowly she lifted hers to match. A fragile, broken gesture, but maybe the beginning of repair. The difference between revenge and justice timing. 3 days after I handed over the file, the charges against Courtney were formally dropped. The news made headlines in the tech world and was quietly reshared among federal circles. A few family members texted me wow, and unreal, as if that could erase everything they'd said. But I didn't care. This wasn't about proving myself to them anymore. This was about Chase, or as the world knew him now, the ghost of Silicon Valley. He'd vanished, deleted every trace of his social presence, dumped his phone, and moved funds through half a dozen shell companies. But what he didn't know was that while he was watching them, I was watching him. Because before he ghosted, he made one mistake: a single login to an obscure encrypted auction site used by private collectors and black market dealers. He bid on a rare Ukrainian cyberweapon module, one of only 3 copies that ever existed. We'd been tracking it for months, but never had a name. Now, we had an IP address, Singapore, but not a VPN route, a real location, a real user. That was all I needed. I flew out the next morning, posing as an independent investor in data resilience systems. My cover was airtight. So was my team 2 agents stationed nearby, 3 more ghosting Chase's movements, all on rotation. We found him sipping espresso in an overpriced cafe overlooking Marina Bay. White linen shirt, no wedding ring, smiling at a waitress like he hadn't just destroyed a woman's life. Typical. I didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, we tracked him for 72 hours. Every hotel, every hard drive he purchased, every transaction. He was planning something bigger. The kind of breach that wouldn't just hurt one company, it would collapse entire stock markets. So I let him think he was safe. Until the night of the crypto gala. A black tie event hosted by a blockchain conglomerate, exactly the kind of elite crowd Chase thrived in. He showed up in a designer tux, laughing, toasting champagne, pitching a new secure fintech startup under a fake name. What he didn't know, the event was ours. From the servers to the cameras to the valet team outside. We'd staged the entire thing with help from Interpol and Singaporean intelligence. Even the venture capitalist he tried to impress federal assets. At 9:37 p.m., he walked into the VIP lounge. At 9:39, I followed him in. He turned and froze. "Natalie," he said, his voice almost amused. "I didn't think you'd show." "I never miss a good show," I said coolly. His eyes narrowed. "You've been busy. You could say that." He set down his glass, slowly calculating. "You can't touch me here. No jurisdiction." I smiled. "True, but we brought some friends." Right on cue, 4 plainclothes agents entered. One flashed his badge. Chase barely had time to flinch before they cuffed him. He fought it, of course, swore, threatened. "You're making a mistake," he barked as they pushed him out. "I'll be out in 2 days." "You think I don't have leverage?" I stepped closer, lowered my voice. "You had leverage. Now you have indictments." He glared at me with that same smugness he always carried right until I whispered, "By the way, she knows." His face fell. "She cried," I added. "Said she loved you. Said she thought she was lucky." He didn't say a word, just clenched his jaw and looked away. That was when I knew. He didn't just use Courtney, he felt something. And now, that made this worse than prison. He wasn't just losing money, freedom, or prestige. He was losing the one person who actually saw a future with him. 2 weeks later, back in the U.S., I stopped by Mom's house. For once, I didn't wear a blazer or carry a briefcase. Just jeans, a sweater, and a pie from Courtney's favorite bakery. She was home too, still shaken, still quiet. but healing. When I walked in, Mom blinked like I was a mirage. "You're staying for dinner." I smiled. "If that's okay." They didn't know what to say. No one did. So we sat around the table, passing dishes, talking about nothing for a while, books, weather dogs. Then Courtney stood up, went to her room, came back holding something in her hands. It was the engagement ring. She placed it in my hand. "I don't want it," she said. "I want to move on." I nodded, closed my fingers around it, and slid it into my pocket. Later that night, she and I sat on the porch. "I used to think you didn't care," she whispered, "but now I know. You cared so much, you gave up being known." I looked out at the trees the quiet night. "Sometimes justice works best in the dark," I said, "but it doesn't mean we stop wanting someone to see us." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I see you now." And in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt home. The next morning, the sun rose quietly over our mother's backyard, casting soft gold across the dew-soaked grass. I stood there with a mug of coffee, watching the light break through the trees. Courtney came out barefoot, hoodie wrapped around her like armor. But her eyes weren't haunted anymore, just calm. "You're leaving today, right?" she asked gently. I nodded. "DC doesn't stop spinning." She bit her lip. "Can I ask something? Anything? Why didn't you ever tell us about your job, about who you really are?" I exhaled slowly, because I didn't need you to be proud of me to know I was doing the right thing. And honestly, I was afraid of what I looked over at her, my sister, who had once called me a ghost in this family. That if you all knew what I really did, you'd still look right through me. She walked over, took my hand. "Not anymore." We stood like that for a while, hands intertwined, not as Agent Dawson and the fallen little sister, but as Natalie and Courtney. Two women who had been through hell and somehow found their way back. Before I left, I handed her a small flash drive. It's the full case file, unredacted. Someday, if you want to understand everything, it's all there. She nodded, tears in her eyes. As I stepped into my car, Mom appeared on the porch. "Next time, don't wait for an invitation, Nat," she said. "Just come home." I smiled. "I think I finally am." And with that, I drove off. No sirens, no suits, no shadows. Just a woman who had spent a lifetime unseen, finally being seen.